Hey guys, Yophi Smith here, coming to you with a video on creation. Now, this was specifically requested, so I do want to get into the beginning, specifically the first few chapters of Genesis, and why I believe what I do as far as where we come from. Now, I'll be going through Genesis 1 and 2, a little bit of 3, and a couple of reference scriptures. I'm going to be reading from King James on 1, and I have a New Living Testament right here. It's not that big of a deal if you want to use others. Some say that there are big differences, and there can be, but we have Hebrew Greek anyway, so you can look those up. But specifically those who requested this one's for you. So I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to be reading from these two Bibles here. So Genesis 1 and 1, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." Now we know that there are 3 heavens. For those of you who don't know that, we've got the heaven referencing the sky, the birds fly in the heaven. And then you have the heaven, which is talking about the universe, space and all where the planets and stars are and such. And then you have Paul was talking about the 3rd heaven, which was God's place of dwelling. So we do want to know that God created all heaven and earth. All of it was made by him. So that's just chapter 1, verse 1. It's very important. You've got all of time being formed in there, in the beginning. You have all of the matter. Everything is being created right then and there. God did it. So all of this talk about the universe created itself, it was just a big explosion. No. And we're going to get into more of why it did not happen that way. All right. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, this is very important because there is a doctrine that says that between verse 1 and 2, there are millions, possibly billions of years. That's called the gap theory. I was taught the gap theory. I used to believe the gap theory. I used to preach the gap theory that, all dinosaurs and everything comes between verse 1 and 2. This is not so. When it talks about the earth was without form and void, it does not mean that there was chaos. Some people say, well, if you look at this, and then Jeremiah says that's not the same kind of chaos that they're talking about. Think of it as if you create the materials used for a house. If you create the materials, if you create everything, now the house doesn't necessarily have form. You might have the foundations put down, you might have the wood put in place, you might have everything standing up. That does not mean that it is full, right? It doesn't mean that it is filled. It doesn't mean that everything is complete. It means that you have a house and nothing's in it. So that's more of what they're trying to say. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. What does that mean? That means that the Spirit of God didn't move there yet. That's what it means. Because if the Spirit of God moved there, darkness wouldn't be there. Okay? So that's why it says, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So now you've got the Spirit of God doing things in this earth, filling this earth up. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. That's how powerful words are. For people who say sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. No. God spoke, and the universe comes into existence. The earth gets filled. Everything happens from God's voice. And we, as little gods, lowercase g, that's how powerful your words are. So you need to be careful about how you use them. All right? 5. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Be careful of that evening and morning. He doesn't say morning and then evening. Your night doesn't end at night. The day ends at the day. There's a reason for that. All right, and God said, we're at verse 6 now. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament and the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. See, now you're talking about the sky and all that. And the evening and the morning were the second day. Now, the reason why I'm going through all of these days is because there's also a teaching that says that each day was a specific amount of time, amount of years, amount of millennia, whatever the case. And then they use that scripture that talks about one day is as 1,000 years to God. That's a simile when you hear that scripture. One day is as 1,000 years. What they're trying to say is God is outside of time. So one day to us doesn't necessarily mean one day to God. So they try to liken that to this and say that these weren't actual days. If these weren't actual days, you can't trust anything that God says. Okay? Because in the first part, it says, in the beginning. Well, what beginning? If one day is not a day to God, what beginning? God's beginning? Your beginning? What beginning? You see, if you can't trust the amount of time that God is using here, then a lot of other things are going to be questioned. And we're going to confirm that these are actually 24-hour periods. Okay? All right, verse 9. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place. Let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth. Now, why would he call the dry land earth if in the beginning he created heaven and the earth? Because he's not talking about calling the dry land the actual earth. He's saying terrain, like terra, the stuff that you drive on. Okay, that land. We know the whole earth includes the water and everything, but here he's talking about we're going to call this dry land terra. We're calling it terrain. Okay? And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. That lets you know that every seed produces after its own kind. If you plant one seed, you're going to get another kind of that same seed. You don't plant apple seeds and get orange. Okay? You don't plant money and try to get healing. Stuff like that. People are like, well, if you give us a $52 seed, then God will heal you. It doesn't work that way. If you plant one seed, you get another seed. If you sow money, you get money. If you sow evil, you get evil. See how that works? The herb yielding seed and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Why did they separate that? Well, they separated it because they wanted to show you that God spoke and then it happened. Okay? That's how faith works. When we speak, we should expect for it to happen. God spoke, and then the earth listened to what God said, and then God looked to see if you did exactly what I said. That's why it says that God saw that it was good. It was good because it turned out exactly as he said. Right? Okay. 13, and the evening and the morning were the third day. 14, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Does this mean that he's creating time here? No, he already did that. This says, let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. He's creating that so that we can tell time. Because up until then, if human beings were on Earth and there were no stars, there was no sun, any of that how would we be able to tell time? You see, he can tell time. He's the creator, like a person who creates the computer. We already know the time, but how does the computer tell the time? We have to set the clock. This is God setting clocks for the universe, right? 15 says, "And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." You see how this is confirming all of what he said. "And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth," the second heaven. Now the stars are in the universe, right? They're in space. You've got the sun and the moon. All right. 18, "And to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good." That means that everything that he said, it happened. "And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl, birds, that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." See, he's talking about two different heavens. Birds don't fly in outer space. He's talking about the sky. So you have to understand what heaven God is talking about when he says that. English only says heaven, but in the Hebrew they would have understood whether he was talking about the sky or outer space. Okay? And 21. "And God created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good." These are the animals being created. "And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth." Okay, this is good, because when God blesses you, he speaks something. Just like when he spoke and the universe was created, when it says God blessed them, it will say, "and said." So God doesn't bless them by giving them money. God blesses them by speaking. That's how important words are. All right, we're getting somewhere with these words. Okay? "And the evening and the morning were the fifth day." That's 23. 24. "And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle, and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good." So everything happened like he wanted. Now verse 26 is where we get into the nitty-gritty of this. I know it took 13 minutes to get here, but there's a reason for that. 26 is where he makes us. This is so important. Watch. 26, "And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." This is why God had to make everything first, because man needed to know what he was in charge of, right? If man was created first, and then God starts making the earth, and then he starts making the fish and all of this, now how do you know what you have dominion over? Everything that God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea." Well, that's why the fish were created first, so that man could have dominion over them. That's why the fowl of the air, the cattle, the earth, every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, all of that was made first so that man could have dominion over it. That's how important man is to God. He did all of it just so that you, me, I can have dominion over it, right? Also, it's the first time that you see God say, "Let us." You see, everything else is, let there be light, let this happen, Now he's like, "Let us create man in our image." Who's he talking to? Okay, that should confirm the Godhead for you. He's not talking to the angels, because we're not made in the image of angels. right? Watch this. Verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. So for those of you who think that man's created in God's image but woman is not, no, it's not what it is. And God blessed them. Watch 28. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Now, that's important because some people who use the gap theory use the word replenish to try and say the word re, or the prefix re, has to do with plenishing again, because like replay or redo. But if you understand that this was written back 400 years ago, the word plenish wasn't even in the English language. Replenish did not mean to plenish again. Replenish just meant plenish. There were no people running around before Adam. No matter what video game you play or what theory you hear, if God did not make the man before then, it didn't happen. All of that is to try and discredit God's word so that we can continue to question it in doubt. Not question it to learn, but question it to say, this is not what really happened. So be careful of stuff like that. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. So that means that we were vegetarians. There was no killing back then. All right, every tree, it was for meat. And then it says to every fowl of the air, so every bird, every beast of the earth, including lions, anything that has life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. So every creature was eating plants. I know that doesn't seem possible, but that's what this says, and that is what is. Okay? So that's how important this is to note. All right? And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Why is it very good this time? Because you were here. That's how important the Sabbath day is. Why did God rest on the Sabbath day? He rested on the seventh day because everything that he had made was made for us. Now that we were here, he said, I'm going to sit back and let my sons take care of this. That's how important we are to him. That's how much faith he has in us. That's why he says, remember the Sabbath. He doesn't say remember the Sabbath just so that you can go to church on Saturday and then some go to church on Sunday. I know I'm not even going to get into that. But it's not about just resting. It's not about not turning on your light switch or any of that. Remembering the Sabbath is about remembering all of creation and how much faith God has in you and how much he trusts you and how much he loves you to do this, to give us all of this, right? That's why it was very good. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, not to be continued. Oh, the universe is still doing this and we don't know what is going to be created. No, the heavens and the earth were finished. Okay? And all the host of them. Everything in the universe was created. So for those of you that keep looking for aliens and UFO spaceships and all that, it says all the hosts of them were created. Everything. Okay? And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. All right? That's the creation. That's where we come from. It was 7 actual human days, not 7 time periods. And to confirm this for you before we even get into the fall, we'll talk about what Exodus says, because this kind of helps put things into perspective. In Exodus chapter 20, God has given the children of Israel the 10 commandments. Now, this is God himself speaking, right? The same in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. This is the same God here, right? He starts off and he says, I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. You must not have any other God but me. See, this is him going through the 10 commandments. Now, if I go to let's go to verse 8. Remember to observe the Sabbath day, the seventh day. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. Why would he say that? Well, remember what we said about the Sabbath, right? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Remember we're talking about days? If God had specific time periods for days there, how is this same God talking and he's talking about days and it's not time periods? Well, because he's talking to us. Well, isn't he talking to us in Genesis chapter 1, 2? So watch, let's continue. All right, on that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. This doesn't mean that you can't go to work. It doesn't mean that you can't, play basketball. He's talking about don't bog yourself down with the affairs of this life. Okay, I gotta pay bills, so I gotta go to work. Don't worry about that. Oh, well, I have to do this. We have to do. Don't worry about that. This is a day that you want to put aside to dedicate to remember what God has done, right? A lot of people miss that with the Sabbath day. They just try to condemn people who actually do anything on the Sabbath day. But I'll let you know this. If you so much as turn on a light switch on the Sabbath day, you have broken the law. Okay, so don't hold people don't condemn people for that. Don't hold them in judgment for that. Just understand what God is really trying to talk about. Because the Pharisees tried to do that with Jesus, tried to condemn him because he did stuff on Saturdays. Calm down. All right. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days, how many days? In 6 days, the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day, he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. Now, if there were millions of years or billions of years between verse 1 and 2, why did God tell the children of Israel that he made everything in the universe in 6 days? Wouldn't he make everything and then there's a gap and then he started recreating the earth? Okay, he didn't do that. He made the whole universe in 6 days. Not 7. He made it all in 7 days? No, he did it in 6 days. That's how powerful he is. When he said it, it happened. And still, to this day, one of the defining characteristics of God is that he does not need to go back on his word. He doesn't need to change. When he says it, it happens. He's so confident about what he says that he's able to give revelation to John thousands of years before it even happens. He's able to show you the end of the world. Because if I say it, it has to come to pass. Because that's how powerful God is. God is so powerful that if he were to speak that the sky is green, all of history would rewrite itself. Every single memory of the sky being blue that you ever had would change. That's how powerful words are. So God doesn't just speak. That's why it's a blessing when God said, "Be fruitful and multiply, have dominion over the earth." Therefore, if it is a blessing for you to have dominion over the earth, It is a curse for you not to have dominion. Hope you enjoyed the creation. Click in the description to go to the next video, which talks about the fall and why Jesus even had to come. All right, peace, be blessed.